This was really quite a magical weekend. If you can imagine, many of these fellows had never met before, and yet here we were building relationships of trust, forging connections and moving from those connections to talk about working together, to talk about how to support and challenge each other in the work that we do in the world. And so we began with some beautiful welcomes, people reaching out to each other, making those first connections.
So I'm a descendant of the Gungaloo people of central Queensland, and I say a greeting in my own language, the Gungaloo language, Bimbi Curry. And I think this might be the first time that word, Bimbi Curry, has ever been heard in a place like this.
We see you, we recognize you. We've got the memory that doesn't get lost because our mountains have heard your voice. And your voice is still alive in us.
Those living with dementia are amazing, and they have amazing minds.
لا تسألوا الأشجار عن اسمنا، لا تسألوا الوديان عن أمنا. من جبهتي ينشق سيف الضياء. Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Cold in the hearts of those who proclaim freedom by control, fold to play your cards. But with a handful of hearts, it gets hard to play those cards, paper-thin hearts that fit into your song. These are not cards, these are not pawns, these are people, God's people, Allah's people, Hindi people, our people. They don't belong to campaigns.
Culture to your culture, I acknowledge, I see you, thank you.
When we first started planning for this convening, there were two things that we were focused on. One was how do we create a convening, a curriculum design that was reflective of and responsive to a diverse global senior fellow community. Secondly, how do we ensure that the convening shifted from a diverse community to a community of belonging, where every single senior fellow, regardless of their background, culture and language, came into a space, were inspired and were able to establish deep connections with each other that ultimately were transformative rather than being transactional.
I'm really honoured to be here, and I hope to be provocative in the best sense of the word. Provocative of thought, provocative of questions, and provocative of a will to do something.
That's exactly what we set out to achieve, was to have in front of our fellows speakers that would provoke, would catalyse different thinking and conversations about areas around global injustice and inequities that might cause discomfort. That was really important. That was an intentional part of the curriculum arc for the convening, that it put some of our fellows into a space of discomfort, because with discomfort comes learning and liberation. For others, it was information that may have resonated with them, and we intentionally did that across the four keynote speakers.
If you look at the collective challenges we face in the world, at the root cause you will see a deficit of empathy, moral courage, and unity. In short, a critical lack of humanity. The need to see humanity in the people that you have a difference with is a critically needed commodity today. So, to those who think that it's okay to demonize the people that voted for Donald Trump or the people that voted for Brexit, let me say quite clearly, you're not being helpful. Unless we can see the humanity of the people that were influenced to vote in particular ways, unless we can see them as our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, and our sisters, we are being lazy as activists. Activism.
I think Kumi's message was profound and very relevant for the goals of the Atlantic community, which seeks to bring together fellows from diverse perspectives, a breadth and depth of diversity unseen in global fellowship programs. If we are real about being activists, and he's challenging all of our fellows with this question, then we need to stop talking to ourselves and talk to others who most disagree with us and find a common humanity to have a conversation informed by love and respect.
European colonialism was a collective and individual endeavour that established, determined and perpetuated the forms of global inequality that continue to disfigure our contemporary world. Its address requires us to acknowledge the ways in which we benefit from this structuring of the world and act to resolve those structures in a social democratic and not a national social democratic way.
How can we ensure that the injustices of the past, whether against Indigenous peoples, women, people living with disabilities and so on, are addressed with seriousness? So to each and every one of you in this room, if you are anything like me, there will be many days when you wake up, read the news, and you feel desperately sad. I want to say to you, when you hit those moments, just remind yourself that the world would be even a more pessimistic place were it not for the work that each and every one of you are doing in the different contexts that you find yourself.
Gaminda and Kumi underscored the root causes of global inequalities, and I think it segued nicely into Tenzin's presentation, which was about hope and the importance of leaders, social justice leaders, sustaining hope as they do their work in social justice.
It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And when we talk about ethics, when we talk about ethical framing, when we talk about ethics being introduced in how we design policies, how we design technology frameworks, how we design technology that individuals interact with on a day-to-day basis, you have to inject it with the sense of hope. You have to inject it with the sense of enthusiasm, hoping that it is going to do something better for humanity at large.
Now, what is hope? It's an emotion and a way of thinking. The emotional part of hope, thinking of a better future, is unconscious. It's linked to a sense of trust, care, and caring. But the thinking part of hope is about having the will and the way.
Hope, for me, is not a fluffy term. Hope, for me, is a game changer.
Our senior fellows are of and from the communities most impacted by injustice and inequality. In that work, sometimes it's challenging to maintain a sense of hope. So these messages around hope were important for our fellows, important as they shift from thinking about a better future to shifting to action and agency and acting in collaboration with each other, informed by hope.
Would you like to come and join Kumi on the stage?
The inclusion of the panels was intentional in terms of ensuring a senior fellow voice being woven through the convening, that it wasn't dominated by a keynote speaker, and that senior fellows were included in the conversations about particular topic areas. They were selected intentionally in terms of diversity right across the programs, across cultures, language, backgrounds, etc. and they weren't necessarily experts in a particular topic. And again, that was intentional in that we wanted or asked or invited senior fellows to talk about what resonated for them as a result of hearing from the keynote speaker. And that was about putting in front of the room, bringing into the room some sense making and decoding that we knew was happening for every single senior fellow in the room.
Conversations that were at the beginning quite carefully curated. Over the course of the weekend, those conversations were more and more generated by the fellows themselves, and there were these amazing moments where you'd look out on the lawn and see a group of people talking and laughing and planning and realize, my goodness, there are people there from 4 different programs, and they're talking not just about who they are and what their work is, but how they can work together to make change in the world.
We're not being filmed, right?
My breath was literally taken away, observing our fellows connecting deeply, entering into conversations that they might not have had but for this convening, the laughter, the joy, the inspiration, and the willingness and the commitment to connect for further impact collaboratively across the community. It was inspiring, it was humbling, and it was a huge blessing for all of the Institute to be part of.
On the last evening of the convening, we celebrated the Inaugural Atlantic Senior Fellow Awards. The awards are designed to recognise work by senior fellows after graduation that's really emblematic of what the Atlantic Fellowship is about. So work where the leadership that fellows are showing is characterised by the Atlantic values of courage and empathy and collaborativeness and resilience and open-mindedness. And where the work they're doing is beginning to have a really important impact for justice.
And the winner is the development of an HIA framework for the Philippines team. From Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity in Southeast Asia.
So our second winner is the East Mediterranean Brain Health Initiative team, Elaine Howard, Hani Ibrahim, and Stelios Sigaras.
I think the most important thing about this award is appreciation and recognition of any work. It will be a very powerful push to continue and have a bigger commitment to this project.
It means the Atlantic Institute and everyone recognize the voice of the voiceless. I think it's very good for me.
It really helps us now as we start to bring other fellows to this work. There's an energy now behind it that it's wonderful to be endorsed, as Hani says, and to receive that from your peers, if you will, and from the Atlantic Institute. It's fantastic.
Will Bev be happy?
Exactly. He can use this to convince the expert that, okay, you should engage the community in the framework of the HIA. You should recognize the voice of community. You should allow the community can involve and collect the data about the impact. Yes.
It's a mixture of an achievement and a new start, so it's a great feeling.
At the Institute, we're really committed to supporting those next steps. How do we support that continuation of conversation? So we've seen quite a big uptick of engagement and conversation on the Atlantic Fellows Hub, seeing fellows taking the conversations they had in person into the virtual space. And we've seen a lot of activity around newly formed affinity groups. We're seeing conversations, for example, around displacement, around criminal justice, and around work with youth. And so our commitment at the Institute is to support those conversations as they move ahead and move towards not just the sharing ideas, but the building of common work. Supporting that as well, we are now releasing a suite of workshops and forums where fellows can keep on coming back together to focus on a thematic area and on work coming out of that thematic area, or to build skills. So the idea is over time to have a mix of virtual and face-to-face engagement that keeps the conversation going and that keeps creating spaces, in particular for those unlikely conversations that result in really transformative ideas and work.
I think one of the most profound things that I heard this week so far has been define or be defined, and I think that what we have at Atlantic is an opportunity to really define ourselves, our community, and what it is that we stand for, and what it is that we hope to accomplish collectively.
I think it's been a really good space to connect with other fellows. People have been very generous in greeting, sitting next to each other, exchanging. Incredibly open as strangers. And I think there's been a spiritual quality to some of the interactions here, but I think there's been candor and generosity.
So it was really enlightening to be in a conversation where we're unpacking these things as leaders and how we position ourselves when we are faced with power of doubt. So I think that was really enlightening for me.
I think the biggest thing is the value of relationships. There would never be an opportunity to meet with change makers of this caliber from all over the world. You just couldn't create this. And so we're kind of having this feast of ideas and connections and relationships that have fueled my spirit, and I think will continue to do that for a long time to come.
First of all, I have gained the sense of confidence as a community and a sense of confidence as a humanity.
For me, the highlight of the convening has been getting to know the other fellows and understanding the interconnected nature of the systemic crises that we face.
Let's keep the momentum going. When we go back to our countries, let's still keep the connection going.
The thing that I've gained from the fellowship is really a different sense of connection. It has been fantastic to come and to spend time with people who you've heard about. You have an inkling of their work, but really to be in the same space, to be wrestling with thinking about contesting issues together has really been a special time.